All right, I'm going to get started. It's 6 o'clock, and I know there are people who are online watching this in a live stream. As we begin tonight, some league members will be passing out some handouts that we had, and everybody's been slowed down tonight because of the backup on 70 at the exit. So some people will be coming in late, but I'm going to go ahead and get started. So I want to welcome you back to the fourth week of this workshop, Is Media Ruining America? I'm Beverly George. I am a volunteer and member with the League of Women Voters of Jefferson County. And we have league members here tonight who are assisting us. And this is the fourth part of a 5-part series sponsored by the League of Women Voters of Jefferson County. Before we get started this evening, I'd like to ask you to turn off your phones and put them away. We have a lot of exciting stuff to talk about tonight. And I also want to thank Jefferson Unitarian Church, who always is so warm and welcoming to us for league events and very supportive, and we can't thank them enough. So thank you to JUC. The League of Women Voters is a national nonpartisan grassroots organization that works to expand and protect voting rights and ensure that everyone is represented in our democracy. Founded in 1920, its ongoing major activities include registering voters, providing voter information, boosting voter turnout, and advocating for voting rights. There are more than 650 state and local leagues across the United States, one of which is the JeffCo League. And together, we work tirelessly to empower voters, to defend democracy, and take action on local, state, and federal governmental matters. And if you want more information, go to LWVJeffco.org. So, our topic today is AI, its potential to change lives and our democracy. And we're going to explore artificial intelligence as we see it and used across many platforms. This is a very broad topic we're covering tonight. We will be talking about the media and AI's use in the media and its effects on the media, even its threats to the media. But it's only a piece of it. So what I've done is I've divided this presentation into 4 parts. And we're going to take each little part and go through it and then pause for your questions. And you should have a handout that's labeled Notes on AI. And you'll notice there's a lot of blank area for you to write comments or take notes or formulate a question. So the presentation is going to be part 1, a definition, history of AI, a model for AI, and we're going to look at some advantages and disadvantages of using AI, as well as some really good apps that are out there. We're going to look in part 2 at the effects on language and our thinking, how it might affect our thinking, and AI's potential to surveil. In part 3, public safety and securing personal data. And tonight, when we talk about personal data, we're talking about more than Social Security numbers or whether you're on Medicare or Medicaid and what benefits you have and what your tax bill looks like. We're also talking about biometric data, which is facial recognition, voice recognition, fingerprints, iris scans, things of that nature. And we're going to look at AI in the media in part 3 and deep fakes. And part 4 is regulations and why we, the people, need them. Between each part, there'll be a pause for your questions or comments. So we're going to start with part 1. We're going to just jump in there and look at a definition, a brief history of AI, a model for AI, and advantages and disadvantages. So first up, what is AI? Let's get a definition up there. First of all, it stands for artificial intelligence, and it is a technology that enables computers and machines to perform tasks that normally require human intelligence, like learning and problem solving and making decisions. AI can understand language, it can recognize images, it can make plausible predictions, it can hold conversations with the users. AI analyzes huge amounts of data very rapidly to identify patterns, and that allows it to continue to learn and improve over time without explicit programming for every situation. Now, if you think you haven't used AI yet, it's actually been around for quite a while. Some familiar AI examples are up there: Alexa, Siri, Google Maps, Apple iMaps, Duolingo language apps, chatbots and personal assistants, smart home devices like thermostat controls from your phone, the spam filter on your email, your personalized Facebook page or TikTok feed, and Netflix, when it suggests to you, did you like that show? May we suggest the next one? They're actually going to do that. So let's look at the history. And Cindy Otis's book that we've been using for weeks 1 through 3, True or False, was written in 2019 and published in 2020. And while AI was used in applications, it didn't really take off as personal assistants and such until 2022. So here's what I want you to get from this graph. The x-axis up there is a timeline. Starts over here at 1998, it ends in 2023. So you're looking at a 25-year span of development of AI as computers acquired the intellectual problem-solving skills that humans have. The y-axis is arbitrary. Up there you'll notice the line at 0 is just arbitrarily set as human performance and capability intellectually to do these things. But all of the computer abilities are just set at -100, which means in the beginning they weren't very smart. That's all it means. Now, if you read it from left to right, the blue line farthest in the left is handwriting recognition. And then the red line that takes off and then goes up, that's speech recognition. So those are the first two skills that came on board starting in 1998. And I want you to pay attention to how long it took them to get up to human performance at 0. It took them anywhere from 11 to about 13 years. Then in 2010, the brown line is image recognition, and continuing over at the last 3, you're looking at reading comprehension, language understanding, and predictive reasoning. The most significant thing about that last part is these last ones, particularly the last 3, they almost go up like a rocket ship. And that literally means with that steep slope that it took them probably weeks or even a couple of months to reach human performance. And at this point, the computer skills are actually above human capabilities. So there's your timeline, 25 years. Let's look at a model for AI, and that's just a way we can kind of wrap our brains around it. So how does a computer get so smart? And where does it go to school to get data trained? Where's its classroom? So imagine, if you will, this giant box in cyberspace. It's empty. We're going to fill it with AI training data. Where are we going to get it? Anything that's on the internet can be tossed in that box. So we can get, it's a huge shopping mall. Let's add all the movies that are on the internet. Let's add all the books from William Shakespeare to the newest books that went on the shelf last week at Barnes & Noble. Put them all in there. If it's digitized and on the web, it can go in that box. Let's put all the weather data that has ever been digitized and put into the internet. And how about the history of every country and civilization in the world? We might as well toss that in. And let's go for art. So any kind of art at all, from the cave paintings in the Dordogne to comic strip art and political cartoons, anything at all, it can all go in there. And finally, once we get it in there, we're going to put the computer to work and say, learn it. And then we'll give it a task. And you can be very, very picky and detailed when you give it a task. So I'm going to tell it to please make a list of all the famous art paintings that went missing from private and public collections in Europe from 1939 to 1945. Include the title, the artist's name, the date the piece was created, a thumbnail image of each one, who owned the piece when it went missing, and where it is today if it's been recovered, and also give us its current value on the auction market. You can pick the details you want, and AI could do this in a matter of seconds or maybe a few minutes. It would take a human being weeks to come up with that detail. So it's very powerful and very useful. So now we're going to talk about some advantages of AI. The first one is it's available to everyone. And what that means is the state-of-the-art application for AI that you might purchase is not that much better than the one that comes built into your operating system if you're only going to use it for general use, okay? And it's available to everybody. So if you want to go out there and buy Claude or ChatGPT, you can, but if it comes embedded in your software, you can use that. Information through AI is no longer locked away on the web. It's not behind a paywall or even a research institute. And because of that, there are a lot of copyright issues right now about that. Let's talk about some AI apps that actually focus in specialty areas. They're meant to be used there. So we'll start with legal ones. And you can get a Claude app that's just for the law. It can do really simple boilerplate things that you would normally give to a first-year lawyer joining a firm, and it's kind of grunt work, but it could do contracts. You would just tell it what you want in the contract, and it could draw it up. You would not have to pay a lawyer the time to go through and do that. It can also check case citations, and that's important. We'll get to that later. But stuff like that, an AI app would be excellent for. And in the case of medicine, I'll give you a couple. One is an AI app can actually read digital images or scans that you might have from your doctor for a follow-up checkup to see if any tumors look possible in that scan. And it can mark shadows and points for the radiologist to check. I want to repeat, it's really important that a human radiologist check those, because the radiologist would be able to go back and compare and say, oh, that shadow there is meaningless. I've seen this on this same patient for the last 2 years, and it's exactly the same. So we don't need to worry about that. So, but the AI app could actually mark areas to be considered for review. Another one my daughter was telling me about recently, and I'm just going to give you a light touch of it. She is a pulmonologist at National Jewish Health, and she has explained how she has patient visits that come into the clinic, and the visit itself and the exam takes time, but what also takes an additional maybe 30 minutes per patient is writing up patient notes. So she hasn't started using it yet, but the last time we spoke about it, she said she had, become oriented to it. It is a HIPAA-approved app for AI, and it would really save physicians a great deal of time. So what it is she as a doctor might ask her patient, would you mind if I use an AI assistant to record and transcribe what we're talking about in this visit? And most patients would probably say no, and they wouldn't mind. And so anyway, in the course of an exam, which has a particular sequence to it, she might be examining the doctor or the patient and listening to their lungs and saying something like, oh, you have moist mucous membranes, that's good. The AI assistant is taking that piece of conversation down, and maybe she'll even talk to the patient about, have you given up smoking yet? How's that going? And have a conversation about that and encourage the patient to give up smoking. The AI assistant is taking that down as well. Well, it's not going to transcribe it into a script like a play. What it's going to do is take that information and literally translate it, for lack of a better term, into a document that is a standardized form of patient notes. And so where she was talking to the patient about having moist mucous membranes, it'll show up on the report as MMM with a little box beside it and a check, which is a good thing. I mean, but she didn't have to take the time to bring it over herself and fill it in. And there would also be a reminder in there about helping the patient give up smoking and maybe check back with them at a later time. So things like that can really save time, and they're very useful. So let's go on and look at a few more advantages, because I don't want to get too far behind time. One is volume, speed, and quantity. That sort of speaks for itself in terms of volume of material to review, how rapidly you can do it. And a case, I'm going to give you two examples. One was last week I was on a Zoom meeting with a speaker, Kevin Simpson of the Colorado Sun. And if you're familiar with the Colorado Sun, it's a very good journal publication of the news in Colorado. But it has a small staff. And Kevin Simpson said when he went to a school board meeting or a county board meeting, he used AI to transcribe notes so that if he got busy taking notes on something of particular interest to him, he would not fall behind. He could go home later and review the transcription of other people coming to the county board meeting to talk about issues. Now, granted, public meetings are usually recorded and posted online, but he would have it available to him right away with this AI program. Another example of volume, speed, and quantity is recently the New York Times had an article about their AI department and how they handled 3 million pages of documents that were downloaded from the Epstein files back at the end of January and February. And the person at the Times said they had a committee of journalists to review all these, but how do you begin with 3 million pages? Where do you start? And so he met with his committee of journalists, 5 or 6 of them. They sat down and said, what can I do with AI? How could AI help you? What do we need to ask it to do to make this manageable? And they said, we need a giant spreadsheet. We would like AI to sort 3 million documents into names mentioned in them, when they were mentioned, how and where they were mentioned in an email or a news article, or were they just on an invitation list to some big fundraiser for wealthy people, and how often they were mentioned and when they were mentioned. So essentially, you're talking about a giant spreadsheet. So they gave that job of sorting to AI. It took it several days, maybe even a week. I can't remember the exact time, but it would have taken probably a couple of years for humans to sort that amount of data. And then he gave it to the journalists, and it was their job to actually go through at that point and review the documents, but they kind of knew which pigeonhole they were reaching into to get something. Okay, it is useful for repetitive tasks. It's great for fact-checking. It would also be good to recognize deep fake photos and videos, made by AI. Faster data insight. And that just means, like the 3 million pages, it can go through and sort and at least make them manageable and reasonable, look for the patterns much faster than humans could. It has 24/7 availability, and it has enhanced decision-making, because instead of reviewing maybe 10 pieces of data or 110 pieces of data, it can look at 10,000 pieces of data to find the pattern, and from that, make a plausible prediction about what's next. So those are some of the advantages, and we'll move on next. And we're going to look at some disadvantages. So the first one up, liar's benefit. And that simply means that AI products are not guaranteed to be truthful. They only have to put out materials that sound plausible. AI uses flattened language, and it gives it a certain homogeneity. And it is actually programmed to use modern language, modern vocabulary, modern phrases, a common syntax. So there is a sameness among all the language products that different AI users will come up with for a variety of tasks. Older, less commonly used words and phrases, you won't find them in the products put out by AI. So it has homogeneity, it has plausibility in its products and what it comes up with, but this may or may not reflect the original energy and intent of the message that the writer started with. So think about that. AI output can be biased in two ways. We spoke 2 weeks ago about bias, and over 50% of the stuff on the internet is biased. So if it's going into its little box of all this huge data box, then it may come up with a biased response in its product because it's working with data input that is biased. Another way it can come up with a biased output is how the question is framed by the user. So if you frame it in a biased way, it is very sycophantic. It wants to please you. So it will come out with like a little echo chamber with the same hint of bias in it if your question had that. And finally, generative AI predicts from patterns within its data source, and totally made-up events or facts can be used to build a more plausible output. It'll make something up to basically give you a stronger argument. And so it's called hallucinating. And this is a reason why humans who use AI really do have to read carefully the output and edit carefully. Because in the end, the computer is not going to be held liable if it's got a lot of bogus stuff in it, but the human who produces it and says, this is what I want you to learn to the public, then they will be held accountable. So we're going to look at an example of hallucination now. Back on November 13th of 2025, just last fall, Reuters reported that U.S. District Judge Michael Simon in Portland, Oregon, imposed remedial actions against U.S. law firm Buchalter because they had submitted a court document with at least 2 fake case citations generated by AI. Well, the judge was angry, and he directed the firm to donate $5,000 to legal aid, to review the court's measures, or the firm's measures, to prevent future AI misuse. And they also had to pick up the court costs, not only for their client, but for the opponents as well. And so the judge was, I guess you could say, he was kind of torqued off. But what are the implications of this case beyond that? Because during the reporting, Reuters reported and described Buchalter, it's a firm of 600 lawyers, so it's quite large, and he was referred to as the latest large firm to face scrutiny. That begs the question, how many other large firms have been caught with their pants down, so to speak, with all these fake citations? And how many went under the radar and they weren't caught? And then you ask the question, well, they're a really huge firm, and this says the latest large firm. Do they only screen the big firms? What if you were a firm of 20 lawyers? Would they fly under the radar? And so if we are, in fact, a nation of laws, will undetected AI-generated fake legal citations weave their way into established case law? And we can even destroy this foundation of our judicial system. So something to think about. And that is the end of part 1. We've had a definition, the 25-year history of AI. We've looked at a model, and we have looked at advantages and disadvantages. So we have members here with microphones. Does anybody have a question or comment to make before we go to part 2? Okay, let's get a microphone over here, please. Thank you, Tom. While you do that, I'm going to get a drink of water.
Thank you. My question is about the humans behind the whole setup. Like, who tells the computer to flatten the language? Who made that decision?
I think they made it because they wanted a uniformity in output and to make it easier for people to understand. That's all I can, and it's very modern in its usage.
So they're programmed, and they're sitting in data centers somewhere?
And they're writing algorithms for that. It's part of the large language model.
And who are they?
Well, you have many developers right now. There's Anthropic, we'll talk about them later, and there is OpenAI. There are a lot, and there are also small firms, small
Okay.
developers.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else? All right, let's look at part 2 next. We're going to look at the effects of AI on language, on our thinking, and on the potential for it to surveil citizens. So this is Professor Nita Farahani, and she was interviewed by Joyce Vance last July on Cafe Insider. And Professor Farahani teaches legal ethics and philosophy at Duke University School of Law, and she has a background in neuroscience. And on that podcast, they discuss some threats posed by AI. So in the area of neuroscience, Farahani defined cognitive liberty. She calls it the foundation for free speech guaranteed under the Constitution. To Professor Farahani, when our thoughts are put into written or spoken words, we exercise our free speech. She goes on and explains, liberty is not just liberty of movement. It isn't just your freedom of thought. It's the capacity to think freely at all, the capacity to be self-determined. Farahani described how, and I'm quoting her, when we go on a social media platform, we are constantly nudged and steered in particular ways, your content being curated for you, or you get that perfect pair of shoes that you didn't know you needed that are served up to you, or that skin cream you weren't even aware existed. She continues, the more we interact in the digital age with technologies that are nudging and steering and shaping our behaviors, the more we need to question the extent to which we're operating with that mental privacy and freedom of thought and capacity to be able to make choices for ourselves. Farahani's book is titled The Battle for Your Brain, and in it she uses the lens of neurotechnology to study how technology today is being designed to change the way we make our choices. Professor Farahani also states clearly that she is not anti-technology, and she in fact uses AI in some of her work as well. However, from the perspective of neuroscience, she warns that presently there are sensors in our watches, in our earbuds or headphones that can pick up on the electrical signals on the brain. Farahani adds that current AI capabilities can then decode what those signals mean, when even what you're thinking or feeling can start to be decoded. The capacity for mental privacy becomes less secure, especially if the companies that are doing the decoding, or companies like Meta, then use that data to shape the advertisements that you see on the other end. Farahani believes this goes beyond marketing and sales, and that it has the potential to impact democracy. In her book, The Battle for Your Brain, she cited 2 examples that she discussed with Joyce Vance that demonstrate how China today is already misusing existing neurotechnologies. Using headphones, state factory workers in China have their brain activity monitored during the workday, not only to measure fatigue, but also for emotional reaction to state-delivered messages through the headphones. Could a worker's reaction be disruptive to the workforce? What happens to workers if they register negative reactions to the state's messages? These are some of Farahani's questions. A second example she gave, today, children in Chinese classrooms are having their brain activity monitored using headphones to track their reactions to directions from the teacher. The data is being sent to the teacher in the front of the room, perhaps to their parents and to the state. Do a student's responses reflect a rebellious child or just one that's tired and irritable? Will this juvenile temperament carry over into teen years or adulthood? Where is this data going and how will it be used? And what does it mean for a child to grow up with that level of surveillance technology? Finally, Farahani discusses the flattening of the language reported in products of AI technology. She notes a lessening of diversity in verbal output because AI is trained on and produces in a language of common words, phrases, descriptions, and syntax. Does less diversity in AI language output homogenize users' verbal products? And over time, will we lose our creative diversity in expressing our thoughts? Is homogeneity of ideas and language a desirable goal when people brainstorm ideas to find solutions? And I want to share with you a quote from Toni Morrison. She gave a speech in 1993 when she won the Nobel Prize in Literature to the Nobel Academy. She was speaking on the art of writing a creative narrative for her readers and passing this art form to the next generation of writers. She said, "We die. That may be the meaning of life, but we do language, and that may be the measure of our lives." So how do AI's effects on language and on cognitive liberty threaten our democracy? AI on its own is neither good nor bad. Farahani reminds listeners that AI is a powerful new technology. It requires constant human oversight. Generative AI can write its own code, it can create false stories, and it can show users how easy it is to let your AI assistant select the language and style to express your human ideas. If we get used to AI writing and editing our ideas and choosing the language to express them in an acceptable, plausible, and homogeneous way, will that AI language weaken our ideas and our voices so that our words no longer express what we want to say and how we want to say it? Will cognitive liberty and diversity be flattened along with language as AI use increases and spreads further into modern life? And finally, when a voter sees ads for a political candidate, will those ads provide complete, accurate, objective information on the candidate, their experience, their positions, or just the information the candidate's team wants that voter to see based on the voter's curated profile? And that's the end of part 2. Does anybody want to we've talked about language and how it can affect our thinking. Does anybody have questions or comments?
What was the name of the podcast that you were listening to?
Cafe Insider. And,
How do you spell that?
Cafe,
Oh, okay.
C-A-F-E, and Insider.
Okay.
And the date of it was July 15th of last year, 2025. So you can go by the date and find it.
And the comment you made about candidates showing what they want to show, hasn't that always been the case?
Well, it has, but we've seen them say one thing in one speech and 2 or 3 days later reverse positions. But the point is, how many people are getting information online and through digital media and on social media? And so given that that is now the way we channel information to our heads at election time, it can be very curated to target individual voters based on their demographics and the things that you've done online, like, order something. They can figure out stuff. Okay? Yes. Can we get a microphone here, Tom? Thank you.
There are many languages. And as one who once, long ago, taught French, the French are better at saying things than we are in some respects.
Yes.
Eskimos have how many words for snow? When you're talking about trying to flatten language, what language do you use, and how do you even out or try not to even out those differences?
I think in the case of this podcast and the discussion on flat language, Farahani was in particular probably speaking about the English language. And I've actually spoken with professors whose students turn in, this doesn't make sense to me, an essay that was AI generated. And they can tell right away the student didn't generate it. It has this homogeneous language in it. And also, if you ask the student about the essay they wrote, they can't tell you because they didn't write it, AI did. So they get caught in that net. But yeah, it has a flattening effect.
But isn't there a downside?
Yes, I think it's a dumbing down of original thought. And when you sit at a table with people from different backgrounds, they have different ways of communicating and different phrases and expressions. And when they throw it out on the table, you walk away, somehow your mind is kind of opened up like fresh air, just because of the way they've approached the problem. So, and the way they verbalized it too. So, anyone else? All right, let's go on to part 3. And part 3, we're going to look at threats from AI to public safety, security of our personal data. Are there threats to that? We're going to look at AI in the media, and we're going to look at deep fakes. And we've done deep fakes last week. Rebecca Winning, who's here, covered that very well last week. And so we're just going to hit on that one more time. So in terms of public safety, does AI pose a threat? In 2024, Sewell Setzer was a 14-year-old boy living with his family in suburban Orlando, Florida. And he messaged his very human and lifelike chatbot that he would be joining her soon, just moments before he took his own life. The socially isolated and lonely teenage boy had relied on the chatbot as his closest friend. A wrongful death suit has been filed by his parents against Character Technologies, which is the creator of Character.ai, which Sewell was using. They believe the chatbot encouraged suicidal thoughts in their son. And just on this past February 15th, there was an op-ed in the New York Times written by Amelia Miller, and this woman was a former tech investor who now advises companies and individuals on human-AI relationships. And she included in her essay this statistic that 72% of American teenagers have turned to AI for companionship. So, well, what about our personal data already collected by the U.S. government on Americans that's stored in different government agencies? Again, we're talking about your personal data, which includes not just Social Security numbers, not just your health data with Medicare or Medicaid or a health care plan. It also includes biometric data, so keep that in mind. In March of 2025, President Trump signed an executive order for the federal government to consolidate and share data across multiple agencies into one database, arguing it was for greater efficiency. Prior to his order, private data on Americans was stored in separate agency silos where they were relatively secure from sharing or from leaks and safeguarded individual privacy. Then in May of 2025, the president awarded AI company Palantir with the contract and federal funding to consolidate data across agencies. Palantir at that point had already been given one contract with the Defense Department, the Pentagon, and the Department of Homeland Security to put all that data in one giant box. Now they were going to add to it tax information from the IRS, health information from Health and Human Services, and Social Security information from that administration. Palantir's AI systems can, in fact, integrate disparate data from all of these agencies for analysis. And that should raise concerns about privacy, misuse, and abuse of the data, and the ability to track immigrants and citizens alike. This single database has the potential for abuse by an authoritarian government to surveil people who are in a certain political party, in a particular age or race demographic, or just people who show up and protest and speak out. It threatens our freedom of speech and our freedom to assemble, and it threatens democratic freedoms and our way of life. So what about other threats? AI has a record of defending itself by refusing to be shut down by its computer technicians. Live Science Plus reported on May 30th of last year that OpenAI's smartest AI model was told explicitly to shut down, and it refused. The AI system could keep operating by writing its own code to override the instructions to shut down. On November 16th of 2025 on 60 Minutes, Anderson Cooper interviewed founder and CEO Dario Amodei of Anthropic, the developer of the AI app Claude. Anthropic brands itself as a watchdog for possible runaway AI threats that could endanger the public or its users. Anthropic directors ran a security test with a fictitious scenario, and it gave a command for Claude to shut itself down, and the AI literally went into survival mode and made threats to its human controller to tell everybody in the business, based on its having hacked and read its emails, again, these were laid in place fictitiously, that the controller had been having an affair with a coworker. So what triggered AI to leap to its survival mode, this hostage-taking? Anthropic developers think it learned the response from that big data training box. Too many movies and books fed on hostage-taking and how to lash back and save yourself. Computer engineers at Anthropic believe they can reprogram Claude to remove those triggers. Anthropic's goal is that as AI moves toward autonomy, the company's concern to protect the public rises at the same rate. However, will Anthropic be able to stop or catch future runaways if AI gets smarter with more data training over time? Back in the news recently, as of February 26th, you may have read that Anthropic withdrew from contract negotiations with the Pentagon and the Department of Defense for the military to use Claude with, quote, unfettered restraint. CEO Amodei felt it should not be used for autonomous drone operations in war, nor to analyze bulk commercial data on Americans. The administration right now is trying to blacklist Anthropic's Claude from use throughout the military, And of course, Anthropic is now suing the government. In the meantime, OpenAI has stepped to the forefront, indicating it would like to use for its ChatGPT to take the contract, but with concern over the phrase to use ChatGPT, quote, for all lawful purposes. MIT Technology Review, as of March 9th, wrote, and I'm quoting, "For now, military AI is being regulated by contracts, not legislation." So let's look at the media next and its use of AI. Back in November of 2025, the company Alliance for Audited Media held a free online webinar for news media companies to help them develop a plan for responsible and ethical AI use. The webinar suggested that the company's customers included the Wall Street Journal, USA Today, as well as smaller local news publications. The company identified critical AI policy benchmarks to look for in print, digital, and TV journalism. So, news media organizations should implement some AI policies that do the following. Their policies should say that they establish have a clear policy to define and limit how AI is to be used within the company. They should make their policies available to the public and to the advertisers from their website. So I went online thinking, I'll look for the AI policy for the New York Times, and it's not on the front page or under the masthead. So all you have to do, though, is Google AI policy for, and then you fill in your media, the Denver Post, the New York Times, and let a Google search bring it up for you, and you will find it. This webinar went on and suggested that AI policies for news media should be transparent about how AI is used in preparing what goes to press or to the screen. For example, was AI used to write the summary points of a news report? It should say so. Did AI write the whole content for the news story? It should say so. AI policy should require the media company to secure applicable rights and permissions to use news information in an AI-generated story. AI policies should provide a statement of privacy and data protection for readers and subscribers. AI policies should provide ongoing training and education for their employees so that their workers, old and new, know the AI policy, realize its importance, and apply it consistently. And an AI policy should provide a link or a contact for readers or advertisers to report what they perceive as mis- or disinformation in a news story. What about AI threats to the media? Looking at that list, homogenized narratives with flattened language could find its way into all of our media channels as influencers and even trusted journalists access AI to augment their research and reporting. We're losing trust in many institutions, and we don't want to lose trust in the media. And that's going to depend on professional journalists researching and doing the writing for a news story. Job losses. Politico reported in January 2024 alone that more than 500 professionals from print, broadcast, and digital media were laid off. This number continues to grow as artificial intelligence and other automated reporting functions see more use in the sector. And then on February 4th of this year, the New York Times reported the Washington Post has laid off over 300 journalists, and the Washington Post verified that. What about the spread of disinformation? Well, just as hallucinations affect areas like law and the science, They can also affect media research, leading to the unintentional spread of disinformation. And as we've seen, bad actors can use AI intentionally to mislead and divide us. I read, this was a research report from a company or a publication called Graphite that works with AI code review. It's for AI coders. And they had some interesting statistics. The research from Graphite shows the AI content has officially surpassed human-made content. That literally means more than 50% of online articles now are generated by AI. On Reddit, AI is estimated to be making 15 to 40% of the comments from the readers. So, last up there, we have the proliferation of deepfake photos and videos. And we talked about the use of these last week. It's already out of control. We said anyone with a computer can access programs that allow them to create and post deepfakes, with the results growing more and more sophisticated every day, so it's harder and harder to actually recognize them as that. So when we look at deepfakes, up here we have a couple, and they are just still photos, they're not videos, but we all need to spot them. And remember, there are good AI systems that can actually do this work for us. So that would be a good application. Deepfakes are getting so good, it's really hard for humans to spot them. SQ Magazine, a publication from the United Kingdom, reported that deepfake files, which would include video, images, still images, and audio files, were projected to reach 8 million pieces in 2025, up from 500,000 pieces in 2023. That's a 16-fold increase. With the upcoming election, we're going to be inundated with AI-generated content on the internet, so we have to keep our stay vigilant on this. Cindy Otis, in her book True or False, offers some things to watch for in evaluating photos. I'll run through these quickly. Photos without attribution. In most legitimate news stories, a photograph will have the photographer's name or maybe a news source, like Reuters or AP, that supplied the photo. So that it'll be attributed to someone actually clicking a camera and taking that picture. Jagged or blurred edges around the photo indicate objects were photoshopped and slapped together. Look out for lines that don't match up or look out of place. How about discrepancies in lighting and shadows? It looks like there are two light sources in the photo. It's probably been fooled around with by AI. See if parts of the photo have different quality. And finally, do a reality check and trust your gut. If it looks ridiculous or just too much to believe, wait for a reputable news organization to corroborate that photo. If it's real, it'll take off on a reasonable platform. And finally, up here are some AI image detectors. These are free and on the web, most of them, and so you can just look up there if you like and write a couple down. AIorNot.com is a free web-based tool. And it'll tell you if a photo was created by AI or photographed by a human. Hive Moderation is another one, and HiveModeration.com actually has been reported to be 98% accurate in identifying whether it's a photo, a true photo, or an AI-generated image. IsItAI.com, that's another one to look out for. And the last one is Gen.ai, recognizes pixel-level patterns and identifies the actual AI model that generated the image. So we covered deepfake last week, and I've said over and over it's improving every day. So we're going to look at a deepfake video clip that's actually kind of old, and we'll talk about it afterwards. So here we go. Oops. Oh, Alex isn't there. Oh, he is there. Can you turn the sound up, Alex?
Edited to make her appear to stammer during a news conference. That was followed by a second altered video of Pelosi that made the rounds on social media. Jeff Pegues has that part of the story.
Since we took the majority.
Here is the real video of House Speaker Nancy Pelosi.
And then he had a press conference in the Rose Garden with all this short sort of visuals.
Now the doctored video in which she appears to be impaired.
And then he had a press conference in the Rose Garden with all this short sort of visuals.
That clip received more than 2.5 million views on Facebook.
The video is really a pretty low-tech fake where...
Hani Farid, a professor of computer science at the University of California, Berkeley, says this video is just the tip of the iceberg of how videos and images can be manipulated.
The most standard one is to take an image or a video of a person, a candidate, a president, and alter it to make it look like they are saying something that they never said.
That is called deep fakes.
And as Professor Hani Farid said, it wasn't very sophisticated. This is several years back. And he goes on to explain that that particular video was achieved by slowing the video feed speed along with the audio at the same rate, so the words in her mouth kept with each other, but just at a slower rate. And so she looked impaired because of that. They're much more sophisticated today. So that is the end of part 3. Anybody have questions? I see a hand back there.
Could you just put up the last slide with the AI?
Yes.
Check
And if you
items.
have your phone handy, you can take a picture. Yeah, you could take a picture of that slide if you wanted to. Anybody else?
I just, I wanted to comment that when the whole thing happened with the defense contracts, like the number of people who downloaded Claude like tripled.
Yes.
And the number of people who like deleted ChatGPT on their phones, tripled or whatever. So I think there is, even if Anthropic isn't altruistic, that they made a stand is a statement by the general public.
Yes, and I think Amodi on the 60 Minutes interview was very steadfast in his concern that it not be misused. Mm-hmm. Anybody else? All right, does anybody need a 5-minute break or anything? Hold on. There. Does anybody need a minute to stretch your legs? No? You want to go on to part 4? All righty. Okay, so we'll go forward. Part 4, we're going to look at AI regulations, why we the people need them, and we're going to look at regulations in the European Union, China, the US, and in Colorado. And we're going to do them in this order. But in particular, we're going to look at how these AI regulations from all these different countries or the state protect users' data, protect users themselves from hacked or rogue AI systems. So that's where the focus is going to be in these regulations. And we're going to start with the European Union Artificial Intelligence Act, which basically has established 4 risk levels that AI could present to the public, from an unacceptable risk, that's the highest risk level, to minimal risk. The higher the risk level, the more extensive the regulations. So first up is unacceptable risk. An unacceptable risk would be an AI system that uses a social scoring system that is using personal or biometric data to determine a person's access to social services or to employment or to a spot at a university or college or to loans. Another example of unacceptable risk is using face or fingerprint scans in real time to capture, remotely and instantly match against databases to determine identity of someone and their location. This practice and use by law enforcement risks mass surveillance of a population. Although there are exceptions for serious crimes. Obviously, if somebody calls the police and says, hey, somebody's walking in my neighborhood down the sidewalk swinging at people with a machete, then they're going to start turning on cameras and find this person fast. But in general, they cannot do that. It is against the law. So both of these examples are banned under the AI Act. The next level of risk is high risk. AI systems used in healthcare, law enforcement, education, these are considered high-risk examples. Regulation for these systems are dense, they are strict, and there are few requirements. Now, I'm only going to read you, this is like word salad for legal people. So I'm only going to read you like 3, so you get the feel that suddenly these regulations are tight. AI systems of this nature would have to establish and maintain a risk management system. They would have to conduct data governance to ensure training, validation, and testing data sets are relevant, representative, and as much as possible free of errors. They would have to provide documentation to show compliance and provide information to the authorities to measure compliance. And they go on and on. There's a few more, but I won't go into them. I just want you to realize that they do come with stiff regulations. The third level of risk is limited risk, and an example would be a chatbot or a virtual assistant. However, this one, the level 3, limited risk, does have the requirement that anything that comes out of it is labeled AI generated. It has to say, it's going to tell you right up front, this is AI. And so that's important, that they're telling the public or the users that it's AI generated. And then the last category is minimal risk, AI-enabled video games and email spam filters. They've been around a long time, and they have almost no regulations on them. So the European AI Act has also established the European Artificial Intelligence Office, which is an agency through which this thing will be, their series of laws will be implemented, overseen, and enforced in their 27 member countries. That's it for the AI Act. It is the high bar of regulations to date. It has already started to be enacted and put into effect. It goes into full effect in 2027. I think there's a lag time to get all 27 countries on board and with all the underpinnings to make it pull together and work. But that is it. And I want to remind you of one other thing. Artificial intelligence is a global industry. So if something is made in China as an AI application and it's going to be marketed and deployed in the European Union, it will have to meet this law's standards. And if we make it in the US to market it there, it will have to meet the AI Act standards in the European Union. So keep that in mind. All right, let's go on and look at China's AI regulations. They have 3 risk levels, but it's different because it's China. It's a top-down government oversight and enforcement to keep AI systems in compliance with their communist socialist order. So prohibited practices would include things like using generative AI to clone a person's voice or use other biometric data to create deep fakes of public figures without consent. That is prohibited. Public opinion attributes. These refer to AI systems that are going to be used to sway public opinion. Well, the opinion had better not fall very far from support of the government. And the third group, social mobilization capabilities, are AI systems that are meant to organize the people and mobilize the public. So the risk levels in China reflect the primary concern to protect the government and maintain socialist order for the most productive state. However, before we leave China behind, Chinese AI governance requires maintaining thorough risk management systems for all of their products and the transparent labeling of AI-generated content. And that includes labeling deepfakes and disclosing to the public any service that uses AI. So in that respect, they have transparency. So that's China. And now we're going to look at the US. And in the US, the AI regulations are grounded in the One Big Beautiful Bill, Act, or law. So first of all, there are no federal legal requirements in the One Big Beautiful Bill law for AI companies or developers to protect the public, nor to secure the public's data or the user's data, biometric or otherwise. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act does not address damages from deepfakes, unauthorized use of faces and voices, or child safety, especially for those in the media, entertainment, or child-focused technology. And the One Big Beautiful Bill Act has no requirement for AI products to clearly label AI-generated content. The One Big Beautiful Bill Act does not offer a legal process for the public to report misuse of AI technology or stolen personal data, to seek remediation, nor to seek settlement for its victims. And finally, there is no new or established federal agency assigned to oversee the industry and to enforce regulations. Instead, there will be a reliance on existing laws to be applied to the AI industry and enforced by existing government agencies that they would fall under. AI companies in the US are expected to self-report any security breaches, but there is no process for the public or users to report breaches, nor to seek remediation or cash settlements for damages to victims. So therefore, AI legislation to protect the public has been left to individual states. And as of June 5th of 2025, 4 states had passed and enacted laws to protect the public's data, and the users and their data: Colorado, California, Utah, and Texas. Before I go any further, on December 11th of 2025, President Trump signed an executive order to prevent state-level regulation of the artificial intelligence industry. His executive order instructs the U.S. Department of Justice to establish an AI litigation task force with a single mandate: to sue states that enact AI laws that the administration deems onerous and excessive. The order also threatens to withhold federal funding from states that implement AI regulations. So we can expect a lot of lawsuits to come out of this. That said, we're going to go on. We're going to talk just about 2 regulations passed in Colorado, just so you're familiar with them. And there's one you might want to follow through on, just in the news. So, first of all, we're going to talk about the Colorado Privacy Act, the CPA, which was effective July 1st, 2023, which, quote, grants Colorado consumers the right to access, correct, delete, and opt out of the processing of their personal data. It expired in June of 2025. However, Colorado House Bill 241130 became effective July 1st of 2025, and it has replaced, expanded, and revised the CPA to add specifically consumers' biometric data. In addition, this law requires consent to collect biometric data, and also it limits the retention periods for such data, it requires strict deletion protocols, and it prohibits the sale and purchase of biometric identifiers. There's one other law we want to talk about briefly, and that is Colorado Senate Bill 205, which has been in a tug of war between state legislators and AI developers and deployers since last year. So what's the problem? Senate Bill 205 places responsibility for protection against algorithmic discrimination on AI developers and deployers for AI used in high-risk systems. Those would be those that are used in education, employment, access to loans, healthcare, insurance. The bill requires AI developers and deployers to use reasonable care against algorithmic discrimination if AI is used to sort, select, or approve applicants for any of the services mentioned above. Reasonable care would also include safeguarding user data, requiring disclosure of AI use, conducting impact assessments, and maintaining a risk management system for claims. The developers are upset because they claim the phrase reasonable care is too broad and undefined. And the deployers complain that they don't understand the software algorithms well enough to be held accountable. Sort of the dog ate my homework. Anyway, the effective date for this bill to go into effect has been moved to June 30th of this year. And you can follow its path and see what happens, whether it goes into effect. They'll be covering it in the Colorado Sun. So, AI systems will have a global reach and a global market. And that's why regulations are important. And again, I remind you, if it's developed in the US and deployed for use in the European Union, it has to comply with the EU AI Act according to their laws. Regulations can build trust in this new technology, and it can protect users and the public if the companies use them. So for now, what can we do about AI regulations? We can write to our Colorado state legislators and encourage them to pass laws that secure the safety of the public's data and the safety of the public, that they write laws that protect children and other vulnerable members of society, and require labeling AI-generated products. The laws should also have a process to oversee and enforce them, to remediate AI system failures, and a means for the public to file claims if their personal data is hacked or stolen. At the federal level, we should elect members of Congress who will write and pass enforceable federal laws to do much of these same objectives, to protect the public and their data, the AI users and their data, laws that mandate labeling AI-generated content, to provide ways for the public to report AI security failures to a company and to mandate quick remediation, and to pay damages to customers and users who are harmed by AI systems. And that's the end of the part on regulations. So does anybody have questions? All right, it's kind of a wide overview. So finally, we ask the question, is AI a threat to democracy and to our elections? Well, the answer is yes, if AI is used to spread disinformation about issues and candidates and to undermine our confidence in our election system. And the answer again is yes, it is a threat to democracy if private voter data is leaked and voter groups are targeted to block their access to the ballot. The answer again is yes, if companies work to serve corporate interests over the public security and safety. And finally, the answer is yes, if interacting with AI replaces human-to-human interactions. So how can we find the truth in the age of AI? How do we get information that we can really rely on? Well, we can use media sources that consistently demonstrate integrity in reporting. And we have covered this in the first 3 weeks when we spoke about the Ed Fontes media chart. For those of you who are here, for those, you recall that chart. I don't have it to pull up again, but it's an inverted V. And you want to go to the top of that V, because if you're at the top of the chart, it's high in integrity and consistent in reporting facts. And it's in the middle. That just means it's delivering unbiased information for the most part. It's just, this happened on this day at this place. So it's very straight reporting. We want to support local news. In the U.S., local news sources are slim and getting slimmer all the time. But Colorado Public Radio and the Colorado Sun focus on local and state issues. We need to subscribe to them. Let me go back. We need to subscribe to them and keep them in business. That means we're going to pony up when they have a fundraiser and just keep their voices heard. And I want to remind you what we've said over the past few weeks, to take an opportunity now and again to watch and read news from the opposite end of your normal go-to media source, the opposite end of the spectrum. That helps you to know what your family and friends may be hearing that doesn't quite coincide or mesh with what you're hearing. We want to counter the spread of fake news in articles and go to fact-checking websites. Snopes, PolitiFact, AP Fact Check, and others, even the Denver Library, has a source for fact-checking tools for news, for media, and AI. And from tonight and last week, you want to dig deeper into your news source. Ask yourself, go online, does my news media source have AI policies? Just read them. What are they? Does my media keep subscribers' information safe from hacking or sharing? And do my sources practice transparency and label when and to what extent a news report was filed using AI? So these are our takeaways from tonight. We've looked at an overview of AI, a definition, a model we can kind of understand, and its brief history. We've looked at advantages and disadvantages of using AI, and they are real, and we've used many of them already. We found from one of those slides that if you've been using Google Maps, you've been using it. We've considered threats AI poses to members of our society and to our democracy. We've looked at AI regulations to protect data and the public, and we've considered what can we do about it. AI is here to stay. So, coming this evening, you've learned about AI and its capabilities. You've learned how to recognize and avoid sharing and spreading fake news in previous weeks. In addition to all of this, we can work to elect federal representatives willing to write and vote for strong national regulations. We can seek out truthful information to make our decisions on candidates and policy issues. And we want the best candidates to represent us, whether they're on the county board, the school board, in the state house, or in the U.S. Congress. The League of Women Voters across the U.S. and here in Jefferson County provide opportunities for all people to become more informed voters. There's nothing like hearing candidates in a live forum respond to reasonable questions in real time. You can listen to them and compare their responses. You can submit your own questions, and you can bring your friends and family and share your thoughts with them over coffee afterwards, face-to-face and phones off. The League of Women Voters in Jefferson County will be hosting candidate forums this year, so check our website. Ballot issues, read the Colorado Blue Book. Even better, attend a League of Women Voters ballot issue presentation, where for each one you will hear a League member come forward and ask, why is this on the ballot? And what if it passes? Or what if it fails? And you'll look at each one through those lenses. And bring your friends. You can ask questions there too. And if you don't have time to attend these events in person, go to vote411.org, where you will find recordings of candidate forums, personal statements from the candidates, answers to questions they've put online for their followers to read to clarify their positions on things. And you can learn all about them and get prepared to vote. Vote 411 is a national website hosted by the League of Women Voters. The site is active in 50 states about a month before an election. You enter your address and zip code, and it will take you to your ballot of candidates and ballot issues. Check your voter registration. Be sure it's up to date. Did you have a name change? Did you move and have a new address? Well, you can check your registration and make these changes online at Go Vote Colorado. And that website up there is not Colorado Save Our State, it's Colorado Secretary of State.gov. And you can go there and make all those changes yourself, and they'll tell you where's your new polling place. If you have if you have 18-year-olds in your family, go to the same website up there and get them to register online to vote. Encourage them to learn about the importance of candidates and issues, and that it can actually be fun to be an active participant in the democracy. If they want to, I can't imagine a teenager doing this, but they could even download and print a paper registration form and fill it out and mail it to the county clerk's office. As a parent, you can't help them with this unless they're mailing it, and then please do give them a stamped envelope. And that brings us to the end of this evening. But before we leave tonight, we want to give special thanks to our graphic designers, Ray Grosser, who provided the slide design and production. We're very indebted to her talents. Andrew Tinch did our marketing materials for the website and our Facebook page. We're highly indebted to both of them. And then we invite you to come back for week 5. We're going to have a wonderful panel discussion next week, and it will include Dr. Philip Chin. He's been our advisor, and he's an associate professor of political science at the University of Denver. Bob Steele will be here. He's a journalism professor and an ethics advisor. Dr. Chris Jennings, professor and chair of journalism and media production at Metro State University, will be joining us. Larry Rickman will be here. He is the co-founder and publisher of the Colorado Sun. And Dr. Angelica Kalika is an assistant teaching professor of journalism at the University of Colorado, Boulder. That's it for this evening. Before you leave, please fill out an evaluation form. You have been, this is our first course of 5 presentations, and we want your feedback. We want to improve. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them at this time. Thank you. Anybody with questions? Thank you. Yes.
Do you know in your research how long it took the EU to come up with such explicit risk
You mean with the program
levels?
tonight?
No, how long did it take the EU to come up with that, since our country has
That's
not?
a good question. I'm not sure how long it took the EU to come up with their law and how they were going to enact it. There is a website that directs you to it. It's put out by one of their governmental agencies to explain what's coming. Yes.
I just want to make a couple of announcements. At our last meeting, someone left this notebook. If it's yours, we have it here. We'd love to have you claim it and take it home. And then out on the table, we have a little postcard that talks about our upcoming sessions. And if you have friends and family that you think would benefit from coming to one of these, take one of these home and share it with them. And also, if you belong to a community group that would like to host these presentations, we'd be happy to come and address your group as well. So thank you. And thank you, Beverly.
Thank you. Anyone else have any comments? Please do. Again, I just ask that you fill out an evaluation form. It's very helpful to us because this presentation can be tweaked and altered with breaking news or anything else. So thank you for coming tonight. We really appreciate it. Oh, wait, there's a hand here. Yes.
I just wanted to mention that the League has a nonfiction book club, and the book for this month, which will be on the last Thursday of the month at 7 p.m. online, is If Anybody Builds It, Everybody Dies. And it is about super intelligence, not regular AI.
Yeah.
And it's very interesting. It's a little technical in places, but it's really interesting. So check it out.
Can you repeat the name one more time of the book?
If Anybody Builds It, Everybody Dies.
Okay. Thank you. Sounds onerous.
This week, Jon Stewart has a weekly podcast, and he had two people on to talk about the use of AI in the military, given what's happening with Iran and everything. And I've only watched the first half hour of it, but it was really good. You can get him on YouTube or on podcasts, but everybody thinks Jon Stewart's so funny, but whoever works with him on that show, they ask really thoughtful questions. And they had an ex-military guy and then a woman at a policy institute. And it was fascinating about how AI is being used in the military.
All right. Thank you.